Thank you all for being here tonight. We know it's not often easy to get out at 6:30 on a weeknight, and so we really appreciate you all being here. And we want to be respectful of your time for two reasons. One, because your time is very valuable, and the second reason is, are there any basketball fans in the room? Well, I'm a Duke graduate, and Donna is a Kentucky graduate. And there's a game at 7:30 that's going to be probably a repeat of the 1992 national semifinals, maybe. But anyway, you've got to watch Duke and Kentucky at 7:30, so that's hopefully get you out of here as close to that as possible. But I think I know many of the people in this room, but for those of you who might not know me, I'm Kimball Payne, I'm the city manager, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here tonight as part of our ongoing conversation to talk about this major infrastructure project in downtown Lynchburg that has now been dubbed Tuning Up Downtown. So still trying to work with the theme of keeping in touch as we move forward. So we're here to give you a progress report on where how far we've come in the planning for this infrastructure, this Waterline Replacement project. I do want to recognize Councilmember Turner Perro, who is in the back. I saw he just arrived. The mayor was going to be here and actually give you welcome, but he didn't get away from Loudoun County until about 3 or 3:30, so he may not make it at all. But if he gets here, if any other council members get here, we'll certainly recognize them. And they're here to hear your issues and concerns as well at any point in this program. I'm here to give you an introduction into this project, to kind of remind you where the project's been and where it's going, and to introduce the project team, who will then speak to you about their individual areas of responsibilities. So I don't know who's controlling the slides. Oh, I am? Okay. All right. So there's our agenda for the evening. And I'm counting on anybody here from city staff who, if I mess up, give me the high sign and tell me I'm not doing it right. So this is totally unrehearsed. All right. So this is my role right here. Just a reminder, this project is starting off as a waterline replacement project in about 40 blocks of downtown. Some of our water lines, as you're going to hear later, have been into the ground here for well over 150 years. And they are in need of replacement. Those of you who have businesses downtown have probably may have experienced the problems that these water lines can cause, particularly around this time of year when it starts getting cold in December and January. We have the greater potential for water lines to break and the issues that causes. And so as part of our downtown revitalization effort, it's really important for the future that we get the infrastructure in place, the underground infrastructure. Water, this is mostly a water project, a little bit of sewer work as you'll hear later, but mostly a water project. Under the theory that when you're given lemons, you try to make lemonade, we want to also improve the streetscapes to improve the above-ground appearance of our downtown, both to make it work in appearance, but to make it work better in terms of functionality for a successful and a vibrant downtown. We have been incredibly successful, I think, over the last 15 years due to the commitment that City Council has made and has stuck with in putting money into public infrastructure and some of the choices that have been made, supported by the private sector that has seen an opportunity in downtown Lynchburg and has invested, and you'll hear a little bit more about the success there in a minute. But we cannot rest on our laurels. We need to continue to work for a vibrant downtown as we move forward. And this project is coming at a very critical time, and we really need to get this done for the next 10 or 15 years, and then even for beyond that, as downtown is going to continue to grow and to be vital. Some of the principles that we are trying to remain true to as we do this, not only to improve the appearance of downtown, but to make sure that what we do is sustainable on many fronts, from an environmental standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint. So we have that. We also want to promote, number one, we want to promote and support the businesses that are coming downtown and that will come downtown and that want to grow downtown and be successful. So this is very much about supporting and creating a vibrant business environment for them to be successful. And we believe that there's a couple of ways to do that. One is by maximizing parking downtown, particularly the on-street parking, to support that to the greatest extent that we can, and to create a vibrant multimodal pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicle and transit community in downtown Lynchburg. And there are some principles of urban planning that we think are important to follow as we create a vibrant and successful downtown that supports business development through all of these other things working together. And so that's part of what we're doing. We believe that we are a learning organization and that we are always looking for ways to do things better. We have had some experience recently with complicated urban construction projects that frankly aren't as complicated as what we're going to be dealing with downtown, but that have struggled with the challenge of finding things underground that we had no expectation or understanding were there before the project started. We have all rightly been criticized or heard concerns about the Midtown Connector, about the work on the riverfront with the last section of the James River Interceptor. And so we are taking a different approach on this project in order to address those concerns, those challenges, and what we have learned through that process. And so the process that we are using here that we have used, frankly, to identify the contractor for this work is this construction management at risk process, where we are working early on to identify a contractor or a construction management firm that will help us in the exploration and the design of this work, and then to continue this work with some risk on their part. In terms of schedule, in terms of activities, and in terms of how we manage this project together. It is truly a partnership that we are developing. I'm pleased to announce, this is probably the first public announcement, I guess, Clue, that English Construction has been chosen as a construction management firm. Not only did they give us a really excellent presentation, we interviewed 3 local firms for this work, all of which we were very impressed with. We were impressed with English's, the breadth of their experience in infrastructure work. We've seen their work across the city. Anybody who's been watching the bridge construction on the Kemper Street Bridge over the expressway knows how that project has just been moving right along. That's what we hope for downtown. And the great thing about English is they are an absolute stakeholder. If they had not been the construction firm that we picked, they would be here at this meeting anyway because they've got their business up on Church Street. So they are absolutely a stakeholder. And matter of fact, the first section of this job is going to take place right in front of their business. So again, they've got a lot of irons in the fire on this one. So we're pleased with this process. We think it's going to work together, work well for us together to complete this. You will already see that they're doing some work that you'll hear a little bit more later in trying to determine what is going on underground and how we plan for that, instead of just going in and tearing up the street and finding a surprise, which we're probably guaranteed to find anyway, but we want to minimize those. The other thing I want to talk to you about, we have been talking since early on in the discussions about this, about the potential for two-way traffic and four-way stops at the intersections. And you're going to hear more about that as we talk about this later on today. As we have gotten deeper and deeper into this process, we have come to the conclusion that it is really best to focus in one direction rather than to have an either-or process here. And we are convinced as a team, as a staff, that the way to go is for two-way traffic downtown ultimately, and four-way stops at the intersections. We don't know, we can't tell you exactly when that will happen. We can't guarantee you that it will happen, but we can tell you that that is the goal that we've identified that we think is appropriate for supporting all of the principles that we've espoused for the further development of downtown. And we're going to have to see how it goes as these phases progress forward, but that's the direction that we believe is appropriate to head in at this time. And we will certainly have a community discussion about that, but that's kind of where our focus is right now. The last thing I have been asked to do, at least at this point, is to introduce the project team. I've already mentioned at least one or two of them, so I will give them a chance to stand up and be recognized. First of all, I want to recognize Jim Talion. Jim is the project manager for this project. Jim has come to us from the Water Resources Department. This, of course, started as a water resources project, and we want to understand that's role, but it's really become a much broader process, including public works and community development and others downtown. Scott Parkins from the Water Resources Department kind of has the, Scott, stand up so they can recognize you, has the focus primarily on the water infrastructure part and sewer infrastructure part of this project. What will be going on underground primarily. Cherie Taylor from the Public Works Department, fresh off her victory on the Bluff Walk. Cherie was a project manager who took over and finished the Bluff Walk project, so you can see the results of Cherie's work and sort of the quality that is going on there. And so Cherie is going to be responsible for the streetscape portion of this work, and so the above ground portion of this project. We have Joanne Martin, who is in the back with our Communications and Marketing Department. One of our principles in this project, or one of our goals, is to communicate with you. So I want to thank Joanne for organizing tonight's meeting and for all that she will do to make sure that you understand how to contact us and that we can continue to talk about this process. In order to advance that, we've actually hired a firm of communications experts to help us with this process. And I want to introduce, first of all, Chris. Is Kayla? Sella, excuse me, from Sella Molinar and Associates. She is the CEO, and we have hired her firm to assist us with the communications. Chris has hired Heather Kennedy, who is our public outreach person, and Heather will be one of the primary point people. If you have an issue with this project and you need to communicate with somebody about this project, it's Heather. Many of you know Heather from her days in Lynch's Landing. What you may not know about Heather is that she came to Lynch's Landing with experience in doing infrastructure replacement projects in California, right? So she has done projects of this magnitude in other places, and so we're pleased to have her on this team, but both because of her knowledge of how that works, but because of the communication skill that Sella Molinar will bring to this process. I want to introduce some of the principals with English Construction. Clu Pettyjohn, here on the front, is the project manager from English, is that correct? Okay, and then Henry Myers, is Henry here? Okay, so that's another name. You'll get to know Henry as well. We also have Kevin Williams from Whitman Reichert and Associates here. Kevin is doing the design work, mostly the water and sewer work, but also coordinating the design work for the landscaping, but working with a company known as Land Planning and Design Associates. Mark Lieberth, is he here? There's Mark. So Mark's the guy who's doing all the pretty stuff up above ground. Okay. So again, this is the project team that we have working on this project. Someone else is in the room tonight who I also want to recognize, because we are trying to coordinate with other people who have an infrastructure interest downtown. So I want to recognize Jim Hines, who was with AEP. I think it's been said that AEP's infrastructure is almost as old as ours. Not quite. Some of our water lines went in before electricity was invented, I think. But AEP is going to, we're very grateful for the fact that AEP is taking this as an opportunity to look at their infrastructure and to see how they can improve that so that we don't pave the street and they come in and rip it up again. But we're also working with the gas company and the telephone companies and everybody as well. I don't know if there's anybody from the gas company or the telephone company here tonight, but we understand the importance of working with all of them together to make sure this project, that when the asphalt goes down at the end, that it's not coming up anytime soon. And so that's one of the goals here, because it's not going to be an easy thing. There is one other person in the room I want to recognize, and this is kind of a sneak preview, and I hope I don't embarrass him, but our new Chief of Police, he's not the Chief of Police until tomorrow when he's sworn in, but Raul Diaz is here tonight. If things really get out of hand on this project, we'll have to call him. But again, this is, I think, this is all of us across all of the departments of the city understand the magnitude of this project, and I think you will have everybody from Public Works and Water Resources, and Communications and Marketing, Community Development, Tourism, just the whole gamut of city departments are involved with this project, are concerned about this project, and are determined that it is a successful project so that we can continue with the growth and vitality that we have seen downtown. So with that, I'm going to step down and turn this over to Scott to talk about the waterline replacement.
Thank you, Kim. As Kim already mentioned, the water line, quite frankly, is a bit old. We're proud to say that the city of Lynchburg has a water line in this project area on 7th Street that was installed in 1829, which makes it the second oldest cast iron water line still in service in this country, behind only Philadelphia. So it's good to see that back then that they made things that last, because it obviously has lasted a bit. But the project area does consist of water lines that were installed from 1829 throughout most of the 1800s. The youngest water line in the area was 1925. And the research organization DIPRA has basically come out with a publication that has said that the expected useful life of unlined cast iron is around 100 years. So you can see we're quite markedly concerned that most of our water line has exceeded that time frame, and that leads to results such as these pictures here, where you have the pipes that have obviously broken due to age and wall thickness corrosion. We have joint failures on the right slide. But more importantly, when a water line breaks catastrophically, you end up with more pictures like what you see here, where you have damage to public and private property, such as pavement, sidewalks, including nice brick sidewalk that you see in the upper right there. So we certainly don't want to leave anything out that would potentially damage what Cherie is going to show us here in the future. Damage to other existing infrastructure, such as sewer manholes, and quite importantly as well, with the number of coal chutes and other accesses that exist to basement areas, you can get water lines that will break and flood buildings and private property. The number of water lines in the street, back in the old days when they needed a new water line, they just went ahead and installed a new water line in. So several of the streets have actually got way more water lines currently that are in use than what is needed. We have currently 2 pressure zones that serve the downtown. We have one zone that is a high pressure for fire service, a second pressure zone that is serving domestic services, and in some cases the domestic service line runs on both sides of the street, so you can have 3, and in one case you even have 4 water lines in a single block. So when one line breaks, and if it's not a catastrophic failure, how do we be able to tell where we need to go to make that repair? It becomes very difficult. We have to spend a lot of man hours to dig down on different water lines, not knowing if that is where the break is actually located. Valve functionality is certainly a key as well. In the ideal condition, if you have a water line and you would just shut off 2 valves and isolate one street, but the truth is that some of the valves don't hold or are in failing condition, and if one valve doesn't hold and that water line goes off in 3 different directions, instead of 1 block out of water, you now have 4 blocks out of water. And if one of those doesn't hold, you can see where I'm going with that. Ultimately, what we're trying to avoid is having to shut down water to make repairs, and thus the dreaded boil water notice. So the goals of what we're trying to accomplish here, we want to replace the unlined cast iron pipes with new ductile iron pipe that will have another 100 years of life in front of it. By increasing the fire flow area, what we're planning to do is make all of the pipe into the higher pressure zone pipe, so we will increase pressure at each building and not have to replace 2 lines in every street, instead just replace one and abandon the other. That will result in pressure reducing devices on the private domestic services to many of the buildings where water pressure would be higher than normal, to bring it back down to exactly what we're currently seeing. New valves at every intersection. Did I skip something here? And then we would be remiss if we didn't at least look at the sewer system as well, because the age of the sewer system is probably just as old as the water lines. But I want to stress that this is not a CSO replacement project that we have seen in other areas of the city. We're not going to be digging up the streets to put in a brand new sewer pipe and a brand new storm pipe just for the sake of separation. What we have done is our TV crews have been out and we have looked at every single sewer and drain pipe that exists in the project area. We have identified a few pipes that are in need of addressing either in relining or replacement, but our ultimate goal is to reduce the amount of sewer that is actually replaced. And the reason of that is the sewer line, where the water line may only be 4 feet below the pavement. In a lot of cases with sewer being gravity flow can be anywhere from 10 to 15 feet deep. So our goal for the project is reline and reuse as much of the sewer pipe as possible, thus reducing the amount of excavation we have on the deep sewer lines. So we do have a couple of areas in the project area where we have identified just that they are in such a condition that we will have to dig and do some replacement, but we're going to make every effort to minimize that. So now that I've given you a little bit of history on the infrastructure, I'm going to turn it over to Cherie and let her talk about the streetscape.
Hello, everyone. Hope everybody is doing well tonight. Let me adjust this just a little bit. Again, my name is Cherie Taylor, and I work for Public Works. I have been with the city for 23 years now, and I can also appreciate Scott's subject on utility upgrades because I've also been involved in many utility upgrade projects as well. Luckily, I have been able to be involved in downtown revitalization projects since 2001. So I think for this particular project, I get the fun part, or the more exciting part of the project. Okay, just to start out, before I speak on behalf of streetscaping, in our first meeting, the manager said that what we were going to do was follow up on one-to-one meetings with each individual property owner. We have completed all of those, about 99% complete. We have 1 or 2 property owners remaining to meet with. We created a survey, and this included multiple information, contact information for each individual property owner. The contact information will go into a database that Heather will speak on behalf of as far as public relations. We wanted to get a nature and an understanding of the operations that occur within every business. I actually found this to be very beneficial. This is something that I've never done in the past as far as meeting and spending that time with each and individual property owner. We've acquired a wealth of information that will help us move forward with building better designs. And during the construction phase, when we start doing sequencing and looking at parking displacements, it's been a very, very valuable tool, and I'm glad that this was suggested. Again, we discussed how the businesses were being accessed, how the property owners were getting into their buildings, if there were alternate accesses for those buildings during those needs of construction. We wanted to have an understanding of the parking conditions, whether they had their own private parking or whether they were utilizing on-street parking, what the parking needs were. And also we gave them the opportunity to provide input on the streetscape designs. All of this information, it was a 3-page survey, has been included in a database. That information has been shared with our contractor, English Construction, as well as our designers. So we're continuing to sort through those and be able to better assist the public, not only in design phase and throughout construction. I'd like to reiterate that this is only for phase 1 that we've completed these 99%, and we're going to continue forward as we progress through the remaining phases. When we last met, we had about 12 different roadway cross sections that were presented. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do with the space that we had. Roadway parameters and space allocation was a big thing. If you think about it, we've got 57 feet of right-of-way width, which basically is from the face of the buildings to the face of the buildings on each side of the street on Church and Main Street. Although it sounds like a lot of space, it really isn't when you're trying to accommodate travel lanes for conversion of two-way traffic. You're trying to provide for wider sidewalks, to support outdoor spaces. You're trying to support pedestrian movement and circulation. You're trying to support the bicycle movement. This has become downtown, and I've seen this over the last 15 years, has become a very densely populated residential base. So there are many needs that we're trying to incorporate within that 57 feet. We have narrowed down and determined a cross-section for each roadway within this area. Up at the top, you see Church Street and then Main Street. Our goal is to maintain the existing curb lines to the degree possible. That will minimize cost. We're also trying to introduce landscaping strips and intersection bump outs, which I'll speak more on behalf of that. We're maintaining the current sidewalk widths, which on Main Street, they're 8 and 10 feet wide, and on Church Street, they're 10 feet wide on both sides. And of course, as Mr. Payne spoke on behalf of, our goal is to maximize parking. One thing that we do need to understand, though, as we're tearing out from face of building to face of building and upgrading our roadway system, there are codes that we have to design to comply within. For example, parking right up against intersections. We've got to think about those sight distances. We've got to make sure that turning radiuses are safe. So although there will be a shift in the location of some of the parkings, we are trying our best to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, and in the end result, we'll have close to the same parking as we currently do. One thing that I'll mention is that on Church Street, parking will shift from one side of the street to the other. The first block, the 500 block of Church Street, we're going to maintain the parking on both sides of the street. In our current design, we have parking on the riverside, if I can call it that, in the remainder of the 2 blocks. And another thing that was a big consideration is narrowing the travel lanes. Currently, the travel lanes on both Main Street and Church Street are very wide. They kind of reinforce higher speed traffics. So one of our goals is to slow the traffic down. I've had my boots on the ground for many years out here managing construction projects downtown, and I couldn't tell you how many times we've had complaints about high-speed traffic going down Commerce Street, going down Church Street, the nature of feeling very unsafe for pedestrians trying to cross. We really have to start thinking about pedestrians as well as vehicular traffic. This is a cross-section showing what we have determined for 7th Street and 8th Street. And again, we're trying to maintain the existing sidewalk widths and incorporate new landscaping and new street lighting. I think on both 7th and 8th Streets right now, there's only 1 light per street and no landscaping. So we're trying to soften the areas and provide for beautification as well. Another thing that's part of our design are roadway profiles. Our engineers are looking very closely at those, trying to create smoother rides. As these downtown urban areas continue to get pavement overlays throughout the years, you tend to have a knot in the center of the road, and sometimes you feel like you're kind of merging over to the side when you're traveling. So what we're trying to do is mill those roadways down, get them to the proper cross slopes as if they were new roadways. And in doing so, that also provides for that curb reveal that has been lost during the many years of overlays where storm drainage is necessary. These curbs carry storm drainage. We've had instances where the curbs have been paved over into pretty much flush with the top of the curb, and in some of your toad strangler rain events, you find the water goes over onto the sidewalks and get into the buildings. So we're gonna provide for better storm drainage, roadway storm drainage as part of this project. Now back to slowing down traffic and the 4-way stops. Again, we've got to start being more considerate of the pedestrian movement. All urban cities that are very active and vibrant have an enormous amount of pedestrians. That's what you want. You want that density of pedestrian movement. You want people parking and going to retails, going to restaurants. And, you know, these prioritizing the pedestrians is kind of a mentality that the city of Lynchburg really needs to get in. I know that Heather came from California, and she was overwhelmed in the fact that the pedestrians are not a priority, because many of these other areas have made pedestrians a priority. And it's not a new concept. I pulled this picture out when I was Googling pedestrian crosswalks, and look, 2,000 years ago, back in the ruins of Pompeii, pedestrians were even considered back in that time. And I had to put that in there because I love this picture. And then too, you have to think, that roadway system back in those days was a drainage trough for not only storm drainage, but sewer. So the stepping stones provided for a very good purpose. Okay, so Mr. Payne did speak on behalf of this, but as part of this particular project, it has been determined that we are going with always stops with all of the intersections that will occur upon completion of this project. That with exception of the intersections at 5th Street and 12th Street, and possibly the intersection at 9th Street, that one will probably stay signalized. But all the remainder of the intersections on Church Street, there will be a 4-way stop, and all vehicles will have to stop. Here's a detail that you see from our conceptual plan that shows the bump outs. If I can get the laser to work. The bump outs and then the pedestrian crossings. And you know, these always stops are beneficial for many reasons. One of the other things that they're beneficial for is when sight distance is restricted. And we have that in some of our side streets, like 7th Street, coming down on Church Street or Main Street, especially when you have your buildings that abut the back of the sidewalks. You really have to pull out into the roadway at Church Street to make sure that there's not a car that's going to come flying past you. So with all of the cars having to stop in all directions, it really helps with these sight distance restrictions. And obviously, it deters through traffic speedway. I mean, we're all human, and it's human nature, and I do it myself, especially at night, going down Main Street or Church Street, and if I see 2 green lights up ahead, tendency is to speed up. You're going to speed up to try to get through those green lights, but that is not really a safe way to travel through a downtown active area. We're incorporating these bump outs as well to make for safe zones for pedestrians to kind of congregate on the sidewalk, and then they also, the bump outs make for the crossings of the roadway narrower in width. And although, you know, I talked about the limited roadway widths, and we weren't able to identify an independent bike lane within that width, this supports it because what it does is slows down traffic, and it makes for a feel of a safer environment for the bicyclists to be able to share the roads with the vehicular traffic. I don't want to belabor this, but we do want to say that the two-way traffic conversion has been in concept since we initiated this project. Our designers have thought fully and continue to think about any implications that would occur. Our designs are going to accommodate this two-way conversion. Traffic maneuverability studies are being performed. One of the initial studies that was performed probably a year ago or so was the traffic flow study, and that really had to do with the volume of traffic to make sure that the streets could accommodate the two-way conversion as well as the all-way stops. We don't want to underestimate how challenging this task can be. We acknowledge that this is difficult, and as we have met and talked and walked the site, you know, we see more challenges every day. We're currently in the position to where we're moving forward with acquiring the services of a traffic engineer. We are identifying all of the challenges, and we are determined that we're going to come up with a resolve. You know, this isn't the first time that this area has been two-way, nor is it the first time that any other city has converted back to two-way. So we know these things can be resolved, and we're going to be very diligent in our designs. Please feel free, if you guys have any information that you'd like to add, we welcome any input that you have on this topic. And that was one of the things that we talked about in our interviews too. We asked all the property owners, what do you think about the four-way stops? What do you think about the conversion to the two-way traffic? And believe it or not, there was not opposition to it just yet. Now, we need to reach out to the remainder of the folks, but it seems to be very positive to date. We have this concept rendering in multiple locations. I won't get too much into it because it's hard to see, but I don't know if we've talked about this, but just to bring you up to date as to where we are with our design, we just got our 50% construction drawings in last week. We're reviewing those now. We have not received our cost estimates just yet from English Construction. They're scheduled to come in the next week or two. When we presented this earlier on, it was very early in the phases, but this particular concept plan has been updated to show you the current design of the 50% drawings. So instead of having to thumb through a plan set of 60 sheets of black and white drawings, this is a really good way for you guys to look at each individual street, each block, where your property is located, and try to get an idea tonight before we leave, and try to get an understanding of what's going to occur in front of your property. And we will take that time to do so. If I can quickly go through this, though, here is the intersection of 5th and Church, and you can see where we're looking at having the trees and the landscaping areas, and then the brown color are the sidewalks, and then the intersection pedestrian crossings at each location throughout the project, and then it's showing the sideway improvements on 7th Street, 8th Street, again, working your way down through Main Street. We've got a couple of areas where we think that we can have seating, outdoor seating, small-scale pocket parks, just areas for gathering throughout this space to support, any outdoor activity. With our surveys, we did hear from a good bit of people that they would like to have a spot to go down and walk down Main Street or Church Street and be able to sit and eat their lunch. So that's one of the amenities that we would like to incorporate with this project. One thing that I want to say about this is because we were hesitant to show very formal or fully built out designs because we don't know what the costs are just yet. When we get these 50% costs, then we're going to examine how we can spend this money best. With the utility component of the project, that's kind of a given. We know what water lines we have to replace. We know which sewer lines and storm lines we have to replace. We have a very good grasp on the cost for those things. Really, the streetscaping component of the project is where we have a little bit more flexibility to change our designs. We may have a variety of materials and not have all of your higher quality or more expensive materials. For example, full width brick sidewalks and granite curbing. But we do feel that we can, and this is just a picture of before and after showing all three, we feel that, between a variety of these options, we can still turn this place around and make it a very nice, welcoming, inviting place, even through changing up from block to block. I know Mr. Payne has said before that he likes a variety of roadway surfaces or pedestrian crossings or sidewalk materials. So, one of the things that we're looking at is each individual block. One block may be better suited for concrete with brick inlays. One may be better suited for concrete pavers. So, we want it to be very interesting and inviting, and not just all brick sidewalks along the whole path. We like a little bit of diversity, if you will. We were talking about sidewalk widths, and I just wanted to say, as the city is continuing to renovate buildings, and if we find that the current sidewalk widths are not suitable, this parklet concept is something that a lot of cities are embracing. And two, you have to think about the nature of the existing businesses changing and being able to support those future changes. If a building is purchased and it wants to become a restaurant or retail and they don't feel like the existing sidewalks provide for ample width, these are great opportunities. These are great opportunities through utilizing parking spaces. If, the property owners feel like, the patrons are better suited to have wider sidewalks, outdoor cafes, then you can lease these. This, I think, would be handled through a right-of-way use permit, something similar to what you see a lot of the vendors downtown that set up in parking spaces. So again, these are very mobile, and I've seen different or varieties of these from where they're moved in and out daily, or they're more permanent and leased for a yearly basis. So again, we're trying to think of alternate ways to support the many needs downtown. And with that said, site furnishings and amenities, that is certainly a big part of the finishings of our project. This is the particular, oops, I'm getting bad about this. This is the particular street fixture that we've identified for this project. We're trying to go with LED lighting, hopeful to do so. We have reached out to GLTC about where the needs would be, and also spoken with the property owners about some of these issues. Reached out to GLTC about where the best locations for the bus shelters, bus stops would be. In addition, we've got to think about that with the two-way conversion of traffic, whereas a lot of times those are placed on a particular side of the street, and they may need to change for the two-way conversion. Again, park benches would be a site furnishing. And I had to include the picture of the Lower Bluff Walk, the 11th Street, and we do have some of these spaces within our current design mark with granite seat walls or masonry seat walls, just to identify little park-like settings. Sorry, this picture doesn't look great, but this is a pet waste station. We incorporated those throughout the Lower Bluff Walk, and we're also incorporating those throughout other areas within downtown, with it being a residential or becoming a very highly residential-based downtown with a lot of these property owners owning pets. We want to make sure that we provide any resources that they need to keep this place looking nice. So we're looking at places where we need to accommodate that with the pet waste stations and bike racks down here at the lower right. Okay, this is, we were hesitant as to whether to show this or not because we're really not to the point to where we truly know what this is going to look like before and after. But this is an image of Main Street, of what it looks like right now and what it can become after a project is complete. And the same for Church Street. This is the 500 block of Church Street, and here is a prime example where input from the property owners, meeting with them, we're looking at modifying the designs to incorporate wider sidewalks. If you look at the sidewalk width right here, it's barely 2 feet in between the sidewalk width and these wooden little walls, landscaping walls that were built. And that doesn't even meet ADA requirements, nor is it enough for a mother with a stroller to get past there. So we're hearing what you guys are saying, and we're trying to incorporate that within our designs. And I think that concludes my portion of the presentation. And I think we were waiting for the questions at the end, so. Yeah.
I'm Jim Talion. I've been with the city for about 12 years now. I work for the Department of Water Resources. I've also worked for the Department of Public Works and the Department of Community Development. And before my time here, I've been a civil engineer working in Roanoke and Nashville, Tennessee, and St. Louis and Lexington, Kentucky. So I've been through a lot of water-related projects, but this will be my first streetscape project. Cherie and Scott and Mr. Payne all talked about what we're going to be doing and a bit about why we're going to be doing it. I'm going to talk about where particularly and when we're going to be doing this. The where part, we maybe should have addressed this a little early in the presentation, but the mega project, the big project, encompasses basically all of downtown. Commerce Street, Main Street, Church Street, and Court Street, between 5th and 13th is where the water lines will be replaced, in addition to all the numbered streets, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th, generally in those same blocks, except for a few blocks where work has already been done, which are shown in white to indicate that the work's already been done. 5th Street's already been done, 9th Street's already been done, this little part of 12th Street's already been done. But everything else in green or red is where we're going to be replacing water lines ultimately in this project. The area in red is what we're talking about right now. That's what you see on these drawings here and the larger drawing that Cherie had on the board. That's what we call phase 1, and that's what we're going to be working on first. As far as when this is going to happen, that's a tougher question. I have this little speech I like to give about forecasting and scheduling things, is that if you really want to know when we're going to be doing something, when we're going to be in your block or your area or at your driveway, the sooner, the more distance you are in the future, the more likely we are to be wrong in that forecast. That there's just, things are going to change before we get there. Now, if you're willing to wait till just before it happens, we can usually nail it down better. But that's a dilemma that goes on constantly. And we try to weigh that when we give you information about when we're going to be doing things, is that it's just going to happen that way. That if I tell you something's going to happen in 2017, say, well, hopefully I'll get the year right, but possibly not the month. If we tell you something's going to happen next week, we have a better chance of being right, but sometimes even that doesn't work out that way. And I have been known to give forecasts for tomorrow and been wrong. So we do the best we can, but things do change constantly. And the longer you're willing to wait for the information, the more willing we are to nail it. So we'll try to give you a little bit of both, though, and then narrow it down as we get closer. In the shortest term, the things we are doing right now, this is going on yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And this is what we're calling potholing. It was alluded to earlier in the presentation that we're out there in Main and in Church Street right now. First phase, opening major manholes and just discerning the sizes of the structures by getting down inside of them and measuring them from the inside so we can determine the extent of those structures. The second part of that, which will be starting today or tomorrow, I believe, is actually excavating some small pits in Church Street and in Main Street to find utilities, to find out how deep they are, to find out how big they are, to find out what materials they are. And you will see moving work sites around the area. Possibly have experienced some vehicles stopped in the streets over the past few days as they have investigated the manholes, and then this will get a little more extensive as we go into the next 2 to 3 weeks of what we're calling potholing, digging small holes in the street to figure out what's there. The next longest phase over the next, the midterm schedule, the next year to year and a half, this is what we're calling phase 1. And we're basically doing Main Street. Let me go back and show you phase 1 here in more detail. It involves Church Street from 5th to 8th, Main Street from 5th to 8th, and 8th and 7th in between Main and Church. And like I said, that was what Cherie had up on the drawing. And that's what we're going to be doing, starting construction roughly March of next year. And that's going to probably start on Church Street. Now, again, we're a little further out there. We're a little less certain, but we're most likely going to start at Church Street at the intersection of 5th and work our way east towards 6th, 7th, and 8th, then turn down 8th Street, and then come back the length on Main Street. That's the current plan. It might change. We expect to start in March at the corner of Church and 5th, roughly, and by July of next year, work our way down to Main Street. Finally, in February the following year, we'll hopefully be substantially complete with all of that phase 1 area, and then by May of 2017, be complete with everything in phase 1. And then we move into the other phases. Going back to that, we have showed previous versions of this map where we showed phase 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to what, 10 at least? In the first iteration, last time we showed it to you, we had cut it back to 6 different phases. This time, we're just showing everything else as, everything in the green is somewhere we're going to be working next. And we haven't decided yet where that is. We don't know exactly where phase 2 is going to be, but we do expect a phase 2 somewhere in this area, and we expect it to follow phase 1 relatively quickly. Okay, so no specific phases. I think I talked about all this. We previously published 2 maps that we're getting smarter, that we realize that things are going to change, And instead of trying to tell you exactly where phase 2 is, we'll let you know in future communications. And that's the last thing I want to talk about as I transition to having Heather talk about is, oh, I'm sorry, I missed this one. The thing we know the least about, that is, when are we going to do the conversion to two-way streets? We can do the water lines and the streetscaping in pieces. We can do a block and then another block and then another block. But the conversion to two-way traffic has to sort of happen all at the same time. It doesn't make sense to make one block two-way when the next block is one-way. And we haven't really figured out when the best time to do that is. Is it at the end of phase 1? Is it at the end of phase 2? We really haven't worked that out yet, but we will do that, and we will be communicating that to you with future meetings like this and through our work with Heather. Heather is going to be your primary contact, and she will be the person to call. And what I like about this is that when you call her, she is dedicated to you. She doesn't have to worry about going out and looking in an excavation and figuring out what to do about this particular situation that arose, or go to a meeting and talk about how we're going to be funding the next phase. Her job is to talk to you and communicate with you and get you the answers that you need when you need, without the distractions that Scott and Cherie and I have to face every day. So Heather, you want to tell them how you're going to do this?
Good evening, everybody. See a lot of people that I know, and I'm happy to be here in my new role with Stella Molnar. Thank you, Jim, for my introduction. Kim alluded to, when I worked in California, I was part of a team similar to this one, who was assembled to plan and construct a downtown revitalization project in Lancaster, California. We called it the Boulevard Transformation Project. It was roughly 10 blocks. I interfaced with over 250 businesses. I also worked with the contractor, with city staff, with the designer, the architects, obviously the general public. Currently, I work for Stella Molnar and Associates, and Stella Molnar is unique in what they do because they have in-depth technical knowledge and expertise in planning, public involvement and project management of roadway and utility projects. So it's perfectly suited for this. Our team has also worked to gain acceptance of projects in high impact areas, similar to the one here in Lynchburg. And what do I mean by high impact area? Since 2004, everybody realizes that downtown Lynchburg has grown exponentially. 353 businesses have opened, 706 jobs have been created, 621 residential units are developed, 81 just at the end of this year. So you're seeing a huge daytime population insurgence with your employees, and also a huge nighttime population with the insurgence of your residents. In order to mitigate the disruption while replacing aging infrastructure, which is the driver of this project, there will be one point of contact. And you're looking at her. I am Heather Kennedy, and so I'll be your point of contact for the Waterline Replacement and Streetscape project for the city of Lynchburg. We have, as Cherie mentioned, been meeting individually with the property and business owners in phase 1. We will continue to be interfacing with all these folks in block meetings and also individually. We also will be continuing to do that as the phases progress through the entire project. We have, and we'll be setting up, is the website live? Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. The website is live. We've dedicated a website specifically for this project. It's going to have schedule, maps, detour information, project updates. It is going to be a working technical document. So I invite everybody to visit the website, and please make sure, I'm going to be updating it, sometimes on a weekly or daily basis, depending on what the, what is happening when the project begins next year in 2016. We have a project line that is dedicated also for this project. We have a water and sewer emergency line that has also been set up. It's for after 5 o'clock. So I will be there during normal business hours, whatever that means. I will be available via cell phone. I also tend to walk the project. I also walk downtown quite often, so I will certainly be reachable at any and all time. My email is obviously on here. And then Stella Molnar has decided that they have opened a Lynchburg office. It was thought that they were going to do this. We do have done projects before with the city of Lynchburg, but this kind of was the opportunity for us to open an office here in Lynchburg. So I will be on 9th Street across from City Hall at 209 9th Street. I am 2 doors down from Hot and Cold, so I'm sure that I will be eating quite a bit of hummus in the next 17 months or so. Lynchburg alerts. We're encouraging everybody, again, this is another point of contact and communication for the project. Lynchburg Alerts has been set up through the city of Lynchburg. We invite folks to please register online. You can choose, there's categories, and so you can choose how you want to be contacted and by what kind of a project. This project is going to be listed on there. Social media, we have, the City of Lynchburg has a Facebook page, so we will be updating that continuously. And then obviously print notification. Contact cards, we will be handing those out in the next week or so. We'll have all of my pertinent information on there. We will be doing flyers, posters in downtown Lynchburg proper. And then I will also, of course, be doing some radio, public service announcements, whatever and anything that needs to be done in order for the correct information to be conveyed during the project. I want to make sure that everybody has the information that is correct. I think that's one of the hardest things in a project of this magnitude because there's so many moving parts. So that is why there is one point of contact. I attend all of the project meetings with the city, with the contractor. I have intimate knowledge on what's going on. So, and if I don't know the answer right off the top of my head, I certainly have a fabulous team of individuals that's going to be helping me along the way. So, okay. At this time, we're going to open up the floor for general questions. If you have questions specific to your storefront, please see us after the meeting. We, of course, have the renderings that are up. We would love to talk to people about the locations in front of their businesses. Also, outside the doors, we've provided comment cards on the tables. So if you would choose to write something in private, then you absolutely have the opportunity to do that. And then we will be reviewing those comment cards. So at this time, we open up to general questions, anybody and everybody, and thank everybody for coming. This was a really good group of people that, I think everyone got some really great information this evening. Yes, ma'am.
How soon can you give us any ideas of the changes in the GLTC bus routing during all this changing?
So the question is, how soon will we have information on the change of the bus route with GLTC?
We have just begun to identify that. We have, I don't think we've scheduled our meetings with GLTC yet, have we? No, but that was on our agenda to do in the next few weeks, was to get with them and start to talk about how this is going to impact that. So as far as when will we be able to do that, it'll probably be several months away before we have any information on that, and maybe even a little longer than that.
Jim, this gives us a chance to recognize Josh Baker, who is the general manager at GLTC, was here. So again, another member of the team, and so Josh, I'm sorry I missed you earlier, but we're glad you're here. So he's paying attention as well.
Yes, sir.
You said in the slides that you'd addressed the two-way traffic delivery issues. Is that you've figured out, you've already done that, or you're going to do that as far as how to unload tractor trailers on Main Street?
We are going to do that.
Okay.
Definitely, we understand that has to be done. That's absolutely essential.
Okay.
It doesn't work without that being taken care of. Rodney?
Sort of the same question. At the last meeting, I was told that the decision on two-way traffic would require traffic engineering study and extensive meetings with stakeholders. And yet, between the last meeting and this meeting, that decision's been made. How do we get there?
That decision has been made in terms of a goal to plan to, but we still have to figure out how to do it, so those meetings need to continue. I don't know, is Lee here? Lee Newell, city engineer, but Lee understands it, and Gaynell, the director of public works, is here, and we understand we've got to figure out that plan. We have to develop that plan with the stakeholders. And again, it's being done in other places, and we think we can figure it out. We're very confident we can do that.
What is your current thinking about closing streets entirely versus reducing to one lane during the construction phase?
That is also highly in flux and will vary from time to time and from block to block and location within block. It depends where exactly in the street the water line is. It also depends on whether or not the new water line is going in the same trench as the old water line. So we will be communicating that kind of information very regularly through Heather as we get closer to that. But right now, we're not ready to even talk about the first block yet on that issue.
I think, again, one of our goals is going to be maintain access to property and get out of the way as quickly as possible. And now those are often conflicting, but if we can make that work, that's going to be the best for everybody. So in some cases, getting out of the way as quickly as possible might mean shutting down the block. In other cases, the business interests might predominate and we have to keep a lane open. We're devoted to keeping pedestrian access open all the time.
Is all of the work that will be done closing streets scheduled to be done during the day, or will some of this be done at night to help reduce the impact to businesses?
Again, it will depend tremendously on location to location. In general, I do not expect, I don't know, do you have any detailed information clue you can add to that other at this point?
Most of the nighttime work will be done for shutting water lines down, key tie-in points. The truth is there's a fairly high residential population, and our backup alarms would keep everybody awake at night if we're doing a lot of work at night. So right now the goal is for as much during the day as we can, realistically, knowing that there will be some nighttime work. But we haven't really scheduled a lot of bulk work at night at this point.
But streets will not necessarily be reopened at night either, depending on.
Again, in order to get out of the way faster, I think once we shut a block down, or even parts of blocks, it makes more sense to do all the destruction necessary and get the work done and then open it all up at one time, versus trying to open it up every night and eat up valuable daylight hours just opening the road and closing the road versus getting the work done in a timely fashion.
And as I've said several times, we will be communicating this very regularly on a location-specific basis throughout the process as we get closer and know that information on a site-by-site basis.
I just was curious whether you came up with that tuning up piano theme here to go with my Keys for the Hill City piano project.
We were so hoping you would notice, Libby.
I'll just speak as a resident of downtown, not in my GLTC role, but if anybody has GLTC questions, I'll be sticking around afterwards. Having come from a community that recently went through such a project, I can speak to the sense of what a fantastic opportunity this is for Lynchburg. And being new to the Lynchburg area, I'm very excited to see this happening. What is the opportunity for input related to the finishing and components of the actual project? I know there was spoken about determining what is the finish of the sidewalks and whatnot. Where are we in that project? Because one of my experiences in the other projects I've seen is, for example, with brickwork, I've seen where the project a year later, the brick is sort of coming up and there's some problems with how that's laying, you know, how it looks when it's done versus the long-term sustainability. And that's sort of an area of concern for me as far as a pedestrian sort of walking through and encountering those issues.
So your question is specifically, what is the opportunity for input? Is that what you're?
Yeah, sort of where are we in that project? Like I said, this is my first meeting for this situation, and sort of what has the city looked at so far, not knowing the background. What has the city looked at so far in regards to how the sidewalks and so forth get set up in relation to brick versus concrete versus other finishes, and how those impacts come into play, whether it's pedestrian or maintenance. Being in the public sector with everybody else, I know that maintenance often comes into play and can be a real issue at times.
Well, as has been mentioned, we have just received the 50% drawing, so we sort of have the concepts laid out, but we are definitely not into the materials stage. Your number one opportunity to participate is tonight, is to get with, probably Cherie is the best person, or Mark, or Kevin, and talk to them individually about what you want, and also fill out one of the forms, one of the questionnaires, and tell us what you think. We're not going to do any like design charrettes where we bring people together. At least we haven't planned to, unless we got a lot of feedback tonight that we needed to do that. But here's your first opportunity to do that, and as we work through from the 50% drawings, which we have now, to the 90% drawings, which are expected in January, mid-January, that's the opportunity right now to get involved in that for you and anyone else in the room that might want to get involved in that process.
Let me add also that we want to be sensitive to the individual properties. There's no sense that one size fits all on every block downtown. That's part of that variety and diversity that we think is acceptable. We have some property owners already who want to do more than we might be able to do, and we certainly want to talk to them about their ability to help us do that. I'm not sure that anybody wants less, but you saw Cherie's pictures of the parklets. It's going to really depend on what's going on in that building, what the owner has planned, and what the opportunity is there to maximize the potential of that private property to be successful. We do have concerns about maintenance sustainability. You can look at some of the crosswalks in the streets right now that are settling, and so we want to make sure we address those issues as well. While I don't see a hand immediately shoot up, I want to invite Councilmember Turner Pero to come up. He is a representative from council here tonight, and we just wanted to bring his greetings.
Thank you, Mr. Bain, and good evening. Like Kim said, I'm Councilmember Turner Pero, and I hope I'm not interrupting any questions, and if there are any more after this, I know city staff will be on hand and the project team will be on hand to answer any of them. But I just want to say really quickly, I am excited about this project. I am really excited about this project. And Dave, thank you for your comments, because you know how it's going to look. And I'll tell you, there are two reasons why I'm excited. Number one, I'm a civil engineer. I love digging in the ground and seeing what the old pipes look like and fixing them. Number two, I've done it before. And Biff Bowen, you remember this. Boy, you and Patrick Donahue remember it both. I was a project engineer for the 9th Street project. And Biff and Patrick at CRI took the majority of the impact from that project. So I was a project engineer and the construction phase field engineer. So I knew the 9th Street project like the back of my hand. And I am so happy every time I drive up 9th Street, and I think it looks wonderful. And this is the first step to getting the rest of downtown looking that good. So that's what makes me really excited about this. Yes, it's a construction project. Yes, it's going to be painful. Yes, it will impact your business. But it's going to do so much good in the end. And I have a lot of faith in CLU. I've been working with CLU for 20 years now, and on and off, and digging up ditches together. And Clue and his team at English Construction can deliver this project. I've got every confidence in them. And like I said, I'm very excited about what's going on here. And I'm also very pleased about the number of people that we have here tonight. Thank you for your interest and your participation. And I know that city staff is going to be open ears. And Heather, I didn't realize that Heather had a construction administration type background. I think that's going to be excellent. Heather's going to be a great add to this project. And really looking forward to the interface that you're going to have with the citizens here tonight. So please ask questions away. Maybe, is it okay to kind of wrap up, or we should open more questions?
If anybody's got a question, we're going to be here for individual one-on-one for a little while.
Well, could the project team stand up again just so you all can see who they are? So Clue and the project team. So if you've got questions, please talk to them or anybody you see up here, except for me, because I don't have any of the answers. They're the really smart ones. So thank you all for being here tonight. I hope you have a great evening, and thanks so much for coming out.